Yep. Great. All right, next up we have Marley, who's come all the way from Guilford, Vermont, actually. So thank you very much for making the drive. And she's here to talk about the VWA.
Right, Vermont Woodlands Association. I'm on the board of it. I'm kind of the diversity on the board, you know, because most people on the board are foresters, there's some loggers, everybody owns land, and there's a lot of people from Fish and Wildlife, all the state agencies come in and talk. So I live in Guilford on 90 acres that used to belong to my father, and I moved there when my son was a baby, and there were some cow fields and there were some trees, and it all just seemed really beautiful. And I guess you sort of feel like it's all taking care of itself pretty well. And I did start getting a lot of bittersweet vine, you know, that was strangling my trees, and I think that's where I started feeling that I should be doing something. Around 1998, when my grandfather died, I inherited some money and I bought land up north. And it's kind of like getting married. You're like, wow, I'm going to get this land. It's going to be great. And you sign the paper and you just go, okay, what do I just do? Do I need a tractor? There's all these guys, they know what to do. So, you know, I think, you know, one neighbor wanted to go fishing. One neighbor wanted to cut his firewood because he'd always cut his firewood there, and even though it wasn't his land. And then the other neighbor wanted to cut balsam tips, even though somebody said, oh, I didn't know anybody owned this land. And so, you know, being an owner was a whole different role to take on of, you know, I'm managing people, and there was these ATVs, and when they got too many DUIs, they wanted to ride on my land because they could get to the beer store safely, except there was 15-year-olds on their ATVs, and I'm like, what the heck? So I'm not quite sure how I got from there to VWA, but it's really been a help. And I did do the coverts training. They're called coverts cooperators, and I really would endorse that. It's just an amazing, you come out with a pile of books, a pile of people that you met. And Vermont Woodlands is, I think, a statewide organization that has the intention of being kind of an umbrella for woodlands, to show you how managing can actually increase the bird habitat, increase habitat for, you know, if you want to manage for a bear, you know, what do you need versus managing for grouse, because grouse like really recently cut stuff, whereas bear like really undisturbed habitat or continuous habitat where they don't have to, well, actually they do like crossing into your backyard, but so, you know, depending on what you're interested in, so there's a lot of teaching about your woods. There's also the whole kind of business side of owning land, of how do you afford to even keep it. There's UVA, which helps with taxes. If you're in UVA, you do a cut, which sometimes gets you an income, sometimes doesn't much, but accommodates the fact that you're getting a tax break. Then there's Montpelier, and Vermont Woodlands, the people in it are all in touch with each other about, I don't know if you know all these bills that were, have you heard anything about the bills that were in the legislature this year? Vermont Woodlands puts out newsletters that tell you about that. So they'd say, oh, you know, timber trespass, if you cut somebody's tree on their property, if you do it really intentionally and take enough, you can actually go to jail for that now. So that's something you might want to know. You know, there's changes in tax law, there's changes in the requirements for when you are logging, that you don't do any damage to the waterways. And oh man, you never heard a bunch of guys get so excited about, you know, 45 feet versus 30 feet water bars, and it's like, wow, this is really an emotional thing, because that's their livelihood. And that's something we don't think about in the woods, is that our woodlands are providing livelihoods for loggers, truckers, mills, people that are making small things, people that run the tourist, the maple industry, Vermont pretty much relies on its beautiful landscape, and that's us, the private landowners, that maintain this landscape and maintain the deer for the deer hunt, maintain the birds. There's birds that nest here that go down to South America, and then pretty much this is where they nest. And if we don't have the right habitat, whether it's the undisturbed uplands or whether it's kind of brushy stuff, or each bird has a different habitat requirement. So coverts can help you learn that, and Audubon is another great one. So Vermont Woodlands is sort of hoping to be kind of like the portal through which it does get really overwhelming, because there are so many fantastic environmental organizations like this one right here that I'd never even known about, that they all want to teach you, and sometimes you feel like that's overwhelming. So I wasn't given a lot of heads up about this, but what I did is I printed off the home page for VWA, and you can all have that so you can find it if you want to. And it's it's not too expensive to join unless you have a lot of land, and then they kind of ask you to chip in more because they figure they're giving you more, a little bit more benefit for your taxes with the work they do in the State House. So if you look, they'll see forestry events and workshops. I'll get back to that in a minute. Consulting foresters, they've always had a list of foresters that they consider really qualified. One of the bills this year had to do with forester licensing. So foresters will now be licensed. We're going to probably still maintain a list of that. And we also, a lot of our workshops will be giving continuing education credits for foresters, so they're that quality that you will get you will get educated to. Okay, the Vermont Tree Farm Program, that is very similar to use value, although use value is something that you have to specifically file with the state, your plan to tax rebate. If you want to become a tree farmer, it's almost the same application. It won't take any more time. But then you become part of this other network, the American Forest Foundation, that we do the Vermont chapter of that. And they do a lot of education. They send you a magazine. They send you updates, and so that's where the woodlands, water, wildlife, and recreation are the 4 values. So I think that there's also, I think, coming up, there's a lot more interest in like non-timber forest products, ginseng, or can you open your land for tourism, or can you grow mushrooms, or so that's a whole piece that we're not real expert on, but we have contacts like in extension and stuff like that. So this I just printed out. One thing on our website, and Coverage does this too, if you get on their email list, is send out a list of events. And we try to send out other organizations' events. And there's kind of a mutual network in Vermont, because there's nothing, it's great to read a book on, turkeys like to eat acorns, so plant an oak tree, but there's nothing like being out in the woods and seeing an oak tree and going, is this what I want in my woods, or can I grow this in my woods? Or you get kind of like, oh, well, they get that big oak tree, I should have a big oak tree. And you get jealous about that. So I'll pass this around. There's one on invasive plants, pollinators, farming with beneficial insects, forest festivals, future of the forest with climate change, bird-friendly sugar bush management. So it just goes on, and it's all over the state, and which is sometimes a challenge. But if you want to just look at that and pass it around, that would be great. So I've been kind of rambling. Any questions? Yeah.
If a landowner wanted to get involved with your group, how would you recommend they do that? What's the first
Well,
step?
of course, we like to have members, but I would say the first step would be to go on the website and start going to events. There's, we have Tree Farmer of the Year, so you tour other people's land, you get to see their equipment. Some people have like these homemade sawmills or vernal pools, or, you get to hike on people's land that you wouldn't necessarily get to go on. So I think going to events is just a great way to get to know people.
And how do you access the web? What's the easiest way to access the website for someone?
It's on that page that I put out. It's just VermontWoodlandsAssociation.org. Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
What do you see the future look like for Vermont's woodlands?
25 words or less. I think it's a challenge. There's challenges in all directions. One challenge is that a lot of woodlands are owned by older people who will them to their 4 kids, who either divide it up or sell it to someone who is interested in the, putting a bunch of houses and making their money. There's a lot of ecological challenges with climate change, which changes the rate of growth of some even forest species. There's several insects that I'm sure you've probably heard all, emerald ash borer, woody adelgid, the Asian longhorn beetle, there's invasive plants. So in some ways, the greenhouse effect means things are going bigger and faster. You can see that, but it also means change of both the fauna and the flora and the human factor. So private landowners really own like 80% of Vermont, and our care and concern of the forest. What I find is that when I was younger, I ventured into a few of these meetings and I found them really intimidating. But it seemed like, you went out with your chainsaw, you cut a bunch of wood, you made some money. 50 years later, you came back, cut a bunch more wood, And that's really oversimplifying because there was always issues. But now I feel like when I go out in my forest, I have to go slow. I see the small invasive plants and I'm just picking them. So we really need landowners that spend the time, that can recognize, oh, I just heard a bird. I wonder why that's here. How can I make sure this bird stays here? Like I have bobolinks on my hayfield because I made a deal with the farmer to delay mow a little bit. And now there's bobolinks and swallows and other birds that are actually losing. They need that open space. On my land up north, we did a log cut, and my forester marked it out, and the logger came and kind of looked at it, and my husband at the time kind of looked at the logger, and he looked at the forester, and he goes, "You've been talking to my wife, right?" Because I think he marked 10 trees on my 500 acres,
Mm-hmm.
So they came and they said, if we're going to do some logging, we're going to have to cut some trees here, and I was like, ah. So that, like you said, that is kind of they're living beings, but 3 or 4 years later, I went back with someone from Audubon, and she could listen, and there's all these little warblers and all these birds that are the ones that are losing habitat, and they found every single 12 of those responsibility species on my land because of how it had been cut. So that was a real inspiration to me to believe in it. So I think the future is really in our hands, If we just let it go, I think in southern Vermont, the bittersweet vine will rip down all the trees and then we won't have any trees. That's my doomsday. Yeah.
I have a 2-part question for you.
Okay.
What kind of landowner would want to join VWA, and what benefits does that landowner receive from being a member?
Oh, okay, thanks. I think a lot of our members have, not that many acres. I don't think you need to own a lot of acres to feel like, in fact, if you own 1 acre, you can have birds, butterflies, invasives. Your acre is very important, especially to your neighbors. So I think that, everything from learning what the species are to learning what, the policies in Washington that's affecting what the species are, it's kind of this whole cycle. So, of course, I think even people that don't own land, we all own state land and federal land in Vermont. We're all technically forest owners. So I think everybody, I think the benefits you get are, you're part of a network, you're part of people that, I think until I joined the board, I think it's hard to convey to the membership the amazing people on the board and the work they do behind the scenes to educate the state officials and have the state officials educate them and have state policy be beneficial to woodland owners and forest industry people, which is not industry sounds so industrial, but it's actually what keeps the forest alive. You also get Northern Woodlands magazine, and if you join Tree Farm, you get Woodland magazine. So those have just gorgeous photographs, incredible articles. You can write articles for them, and then you get all the walks and events and great people to get to know. So I'm not here just to advertise for that organization in particular, but really just that people take the time to learn and to realize that their stewardship of the land is really important.
Thank you.
Thanks.